Just what is grid north and why does it differ from true north? Today we're going to find out. Hi, I'm Kevin and welcome to my channel. As a YouTuber, one of the things I like to do is find a new topic that no one's covered yet or they haven't covered very well. And that's what we're going to do today, grid north. There's 3.6 million videos uploaded every day to YouTube, and I have yet to find one that really explains grid north well. Today we're going to do that. So today I'm going to explain why grid north differs from true north. Then I'm going to verify that explanation by looking at a variety of topographic maps. And lastly, I'll show you how you can use grid north to find true north when you're using a map with your compass. So grid north is in relation to these thin blue lines on your map. On most respectable topographic maps, they're printed in blue. I have seen other colors. This is the UTM grid, or Universal Transverse Mercator Grid. It's a 1 kilometer square grid that military and recreationists use to help locate themselves on a map. So on most reputable topographic maps, you're going to find a diagram like this. The diagram shows the relative position of true north, grid north, and magnetic north. Today we're going to ignore magnetic north. We're going to focus on grid north and why it differs from true north. I do have another whole video that explains magnetic north and how to adjust for magnetic declination. Now on this diagram, you're going to find that true north points directly to the top of the map. In fact, the edge of the map always points to true north, at least on a reputable map. These days with GIS and plotters, almost anybody could make a map, so you might find some inconsistencies if the map is sort of a cottage industry produced map. But on any reputable map, you're going to find that true north points to the top of the map and the edge of the topographic map points to true north. Now if you look closely at the edge of the map and compare the UTM grid to that edge, you're often going to find that the UTM grid differs from true north. Sometimes it's actually very, very close, very, very negligible, but sometimes it will differ by a degree or 2 degrees or even more. Why is that? Why don't map makers simply make a UTM grid that always points to true north? Let's take a look at how the UTM grid system is made. It begins with 60 UTM zones around the world. Here's the planet, and we can conceptualize the world we live on as a round wire frame, and each of those UTM zones takes up 6 degrees of longitude. Each of these zones has its own coordinate system by using the equator as the x-axis and the central meridian, or the central line running north-south of the zone, as the y-axis. This central meridian always points to true north. Now we can overlay the UTM grid from our topographic maps. It's simply a grid that corresponds to that XY coordinate system. Okay, my diagram isn't exactly to scale, but it's certainly good enough to illustrate this point. If your topographic map is in the center of the zone, right on the central meridian, then the grid lines on that topographic map are going to point straight to true north. But if you are away from the central meridian of the zone, then your topographic map is going to look a little bit askew, at least from this head-on direction. Remember, the edges of the map always point to true north. So when you overlay the grid on top of that map is going to point slightly away from true north. Let's zoom in. Here's our map. It's slightly askew, but the edges point to true north. And the grid lines that go right through that map are parallel to the central meridian, and so they point slightly away from true north. So let's zoom into that theoretical map. We'll see the grid on the map, and true north is aligned with the edges of the map. So let's rotate the map, and we'll find that the grid is pointing slightly to the west of true north. And that's where we get that diagram from. So if a topographic map is located near the central meridian of a UTM zone, then the grid on that map, grid north for that map, is going to point very, very closely to true north. However, if the map is located east or west of the central meridian, the grid of that map is going to point away from true north. And how far away it points from true north is going to depend on how far it is away from the central meridian. It really is that simple. Let's take a look at a variety of maps across the UTM zone to verify this. I live in the province of Ontario in Canada, and I'm going to overlay the National Topographic Series index maps. This is the index map that you use for ordering individual topographic maps. And now I'm going to zoom in to northern Ontario, and you'll see that across Northern Ontario, there's 3 different UTM zones, 15, 16, and 17. And for one strip across Zone 16, I've downloaded all of the topographic maps that stretch across that zone. Yes, every topographic map made by the Government of Canada is free online. You can find them in PDF or TIFF formats. They are a bit challenging to find. The government has changed the website over and over again a few times, but you can still find them if you know how. Perhaps that'll be another video. All I've done is downloaded the full-size map, and I've trimmed off the margins, and I shrunk those maps down, and I've placed them across UTM Zone 16. So let's zoom in one more time and take a look at one of the maps close to the central meridian. And let's take a look at the diagram that references grid north, true north, and magnetic north. Remember, we're going to ignore magnetic north for the purpose of this video and focus on grid north. In this diagram, grid north differs from true north by 0 degrees 11 minutes. It's close to 0, it's close to pointing to true north, but it's off a little bit. What's going on here? This map is adjacent to the central meridian. Well, the diagram references the center of the map. That's why it's off by 11 minutes. If we look at the adjacent map on the other side of the central meridian, we'll also find that that map is off by 0 degrees 11 minutes. But in this case, grid north is pointing slightly east of true north. So let's look at grid north variation from the ends of the zone. If we go to the very west and look at that map and look at the diagram, we're going to find that grid north is off of true north by a full 2 degrees 4 minutes. And conversely, on the other side to the east, if we look at the diagram, we're going to find that that is also off by 2 degrees 4 minutes. Now let's compare all of these diagrams. At this latitude, it takes 12 of these 1 to 50,000 scale topographic maps to span the entire zone. 6 go east from the central meridian and 6 go west. The deviation of grid north from true north is negligible in the middle of the zone, but as you get out to the outsides of the zone, it's more than 2 full degrees. If you are west of the central meridian, then grid north points west of true north. If you are east of the central meridian, then grid north points east of true north. Hey, what's going on with this diagram? Why is it so different than all the others? That diagram is different than all the rest because it's a different edition or a different year of printing, something like that. Bottom line is you can't trust the angle of those diagrams as they're drawn. You can't measure that angle and apply it to your work. You have to read the number. So that's why the UTM grid often points away from true north, but we can still use this grid to help us find true north when we're using a compass with our map. Let me show you how. So this is the map for the part of the Earth that I'm on right now. And this is the grid north, true north, and magnetic north diagram in the corner of the map. My problem is simple. I'm at point A and I want to get to point B. Now on this map, grid north points 2 degrees 3 minutes west of true north. Now to find the bearing for our direction of travel, we simply put the compass, the edge of the compass base plate, so that it is parallel to our desired direction of travel. We want to make sure the direction of travel arrow, that big red arrow on the compass, is parallel to our desired direction of travel. Now, in keeping with the theme of this video, we're going to forget all about magnetic north. I'm going to assume that you've watched my other video, you know all there is to know about adjusting for magnetic declination, and your compass is already set. That blue UTM grid is on the map, but it's a little hard to see, so let's highlight it right now. These blue lines that run underneath the bezel of the compass are pointing to grid north. Now I'm going to turn the bezel of the compass until the orienting lines inside the bezel match grid north. Do your best to ensure that the orienting lines inside the bezel are as parallel as possible to the blue UTM grid lines. As well, you want to make sure that the N or north in the bezel is pointing to grid north and you don't have it the other way around. So we're doing pretty good, but we'd really like our bezel to be pointing to true north. Again, I'm going to assume we've adjusted for magnetic declination. When all that's done and we're pointing to grid north, all we have to do is correct for grid north by turning the bezel in the opposite direction of the grid north deviation. We'll round down those 3 minutes, and since grid north is off 2 degrees west, we'll turn the bezel 2 degrees east. That was a very slight adjustment, but it really matters. Now we're ready to go. and we can start forgetting some stuff. We can start forgetting the grid north, true north diagram. We can start forgetting the blue lines of the UTM grid. We can forget our direction of travel. Heck, we can even forget our map. Now all we have to do is turn the compass until the red part of the needle matches the orienting arrow inside the bezel, otherwise known as red in the shed. And now we are good to go. We have used the grid north of the map to help us navigate, and all we have to do is follow the direction of travel arrow, the big red arrow on the compass, and we will eventually get to point B. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please hit like, share, and subscribe. As always, I will see you in the next one.